back from Nebraska. Great to have you back in the saddle, man.
Hutton, it's good to be back. I'd like to look around this entire studio right
Go
now
ahead.
and inform everyone that I am, in fact, back. And it is thrilling to be here. I'm excited. I've been up to my ass in snow for the past week and a half. So now that I'm back in a place where, well, it's still cold here, I'm not surrounded by snow. Hutton, I'm excited to get going on this. What day is it again? Wednesday.
It is
on
Wednesday.
This Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Yes.
And we're expecting the names on the Epstein list to come out at some point today.
How many rich and powerful people are just sweating like crazy right now?
Nearly 200.
That they've gone to Epstein Island, they've flown on a private jet with them, they've attended parties with them. Even the ones that maybe haven't partaken in any illicit activity that are still sitting back thinking, I pray this thing never sees the light of day.
Based on what that island was set up for, with sex trafficking of girls.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they probably partook in illicit activity, but still, I'm fascinated to see if this list we ever actually know exactly who's on it.
Yeah, well, Aaron Rodgers is on with Pat McAfee yesterday, and he's discussing in a feud that goes back several months, back to March, with Rodgers and Jimmy Kimmel, and a feud that is, well, now both guys getting paid through ABC, Disney, ESPN, where in March you have Jimmy Kimmel that's taking a shot at Rodgers because Rodgers tried to make some conspiracy connection with the UFO information that was being released, that was coming out. And that was a distraction for the names that were going to be released from the Epstein list. Kimmel points this out and made fun of him. And, well, Rodgers keeps receipts. He's on with Pat McAfee yesterday, Chad, and on Tuesday he says there's a lot of people, including Jimmy Kimmel, really hoping that doesn't come out. Speaking of the Epstein list. And Jimmy Kimmel has now threatened to sue him, threatened a lawsuit. His response yesterday evening, "Dear asshole, for the record, I've not met, flown with, visited, had any contact whatsoever with Epstein, nor will you find my name on any quote-unquote list other than the clearly phony nonsense that soft-brained wackos like yourself can't seem to distinguish from reality. Your reckless words put my family in danger. Keep it up and we'll debate the facts further in court." And then tags Aaron Rodgers. This has many layers to it. Let's start with the fact that Kimmel's threatening the lawsuit against an ESPN paid employee.
Contributor.
Really, contributor, that's right. He's getting paid, reported $1 million annually to go on with Pat McAfee, who has also discussed this on his show today. Chad, I'll let you get to that in a moment. But you've got Kimmel, who's the host of the late night show on ABC, and you have Rodgers going on ESPN, trying to at least make mention of Kimmel, going back to the feud in March, and bringing up Kimmel as part of the list that is scheduled to be released today. Wow.
Yeah,
and Rodgers, there's always something with Rodgers, and it always pops on McAfee, doesn't it?
It does. The cutest part about this from Jimmy Kimmel is how he spelled asshole with two A's to go with the Aaron Rodgers theme on that. With that, I thought that was very underlooked at. Part of all of this was the two A's on that with Aaron Rodgers. Here's the leap that I'm not quite fully grasping here on all of this. Okay, and I know we're gonna have the actual audio, but Hutton, I think it's more important when you take the audio element out of it and you read the direct quote the way you just read it. At no point does Aaron Rodgers say Jimmy Kimmel hung out with Epstein or that he's on the island with him or that he's going to be on the list. Now, I understand making that leap and saying this is what he's saying about it. I understand Jimmy Kimmel being mad about this, all of those things. At times, my brain, I feel like, is wired a bit of a different way from how I interpret things and read into them. And I'm not sitting here claiming I'm always 100% right with people's intentions or what they were saying. I read, having watched and listened to what Aaron Rodgers said, I read it as he's not going to be happy when this list comes out because his buddies are going to be on it. You know, he is a liberal guy. He likes to go after conservative people. He likes to go after the right with his monologues and his jokes. And he's not going to be happy when this list is released because it's going to be people on that list that he doesn't want to make fun of because he often doesn't make fun of those people, right? That are either left-leaning or Hollywood types or whatever. That's how I read it. Now, the only person that can clarify this is Aaron Rodgers. And today, Pat McAfee opened his show by going on kind of a 4-minute, not really discussion, but explanation of, hey, our show works because we come in here and we talk crap to each other. We don't have a rundown. We say what we want. We get in discussions. They branch off. They do this and that. We're not happy that we're now a part of this feud between Aaron Rodgers and Jimmy Kimmel. I understand that Aaron Rodgers is mad at Jimmy Kimmel about him making a joke about him, and we certainly understand that Jimmy Kimmel is now mad at Aaron Rodgers for what he said on our show. We don't like that we're in the middle of it and that it was on our show, but that's what happens on this show type thing, right? No apology, none of that. Said that Aaron Rodgers believes he was talking trash, but he's going to have to explain that in his next visit on the show. I thought it was well said by Pat McAfee and a good explanation of why that show works. And you don't want it censored. You don't want people, you don't want these Disney overlords coming in and saying, you cannot discuss this topic, this topic, this topic, and this topic. That would ruin the show. Censorship is a bad thing. I hope they don't do that. But when you get Jimmy Kimmel, one of the biggest personalities paid by Disney, ABC, ESPN, threatening a lawsuit publicly against someone that's contributor for ESPN and for one of their biggest personalities and platforms in the Pat McAfee Show, this is juicy as hell. I love it. I love it. And I don't think it's just going to be as simple as Aaron Rodgers comes on with that little menacing grin on the next show and says, oh, I'm just joking around, and then has a couple more barbs about Pfizer or about Jimmy Kimmel or someone else and just says, take it easy, Jimmy, I'm joking. I don't think this thing's going away that easy with Jimmy Kimmel with how quickly he came off the top rope with this one.
Well, but so I didn't take it as he was speaking on behalf of Kimmel may know people. I think everyone's going to be able to recognize names, right? At least that's what we're told. I took it as Rodgers just keeping receipts, and he's mentioning Kimmel. And Kimmel, going back to making fun of his haircut in one of his shows, it's mentioning the way he came across on Joe Rogan's podcast and turning that into part of his monologue. Rodgers is also mentioning, whenever he gets the chance, Fauci. He's also, whenever he gets the chance, he's mentioning Mr. Pfizer, which is Travis Kelce. I think this is just, this is common for Rodgers now when he goes on McAfee. And if he wants to come on there and say he was, just cutting up, well, if you listen to it, and we'll play it later, apparently, we'll play the cut. I mean, that's exactly it's perceived to be and portrayed to be based on the way McAfee and his co-hosts react to it, because they know the feud that goes back a ways.
Yeah, look, Aaron Rodgers is a man with an enemies list. He's like Nixon that way. He's got a list of people that he likes to make fun of, that he likes to poke and prod at, that have challenged him in some way, that, as Hutton says, and says it well, he keeps receipts on it. And Jimmy Kimmel's on that list. So he's talking about Jimmy Kimmel maybe being upset with another list to come out. Now, look, it may just be the way Pat McAfee said, and Aaron Rodgers can explain that it was intended to be trash talk that went too far. Maybe Aaron Rodgers apologizes for it. I don't know, because I doubt he wants to get sued also. I just think there's an easy explanation out of this of saying, I was joking that he's not going to like it when that list is unveiled, because there's probably people he hangs out with on it. And in doing so, I was talking trash. I have no knowledge of the Epstein list, right?
Well,
that's what Aaron Rodgers is probably going to come out and say. I'm not claiming to have intimate knowledge of that list either. This is just an ongoing feud with us. Maybe he outright apologizes. I think Jimmy Kimmel is going to be demanding an apology and a retraction from Aaron Rodgers. We didn't quite get that from Pat McAfee on this. Just a simple explanation. I'm sure he was directed to do some of this, that, hey, we're out of this. This is between Aaron and Jimmy. Aaron can explain for himself the next time he joins us. We just feel regret that we're involved in it in any way, because this is a positive show.
But this is different than Kimmel saying that Rodgers is a tinfoil hatter. Mentioning there's a lot of people, including Jimmy Kimmel, really hoping that doesn't come out. If you know the whole backstory, it goes back to what was said back in March, with the jokes that were being made about the UFO information, and that it was a distraction of some sort. Kimmel making a joke about Rodgers believing that, to me, is different than Rodgers saying something on McAfee, connecting in any way someone's name with sex trafficking for girls. That's way different. So, it's not some joke. This is something that people want out there based on how awful it actually is. Buying into conspiracy theories and going into the darkness retreat and having the jokes and the monologues, that's one thing. But I understand where Kimmel's coming from on this too. Because, what else can you respond with? You don't put that in a monologue, right? You don't put that in your bit. You're pissed off,
right? And I think
there's a list that's being released, and Kimmel's name was the first one mentioned that we're talking about, even though he's not on the list yet.
Well,
Rodgers put it out there.
Yeah, it's two different people singing in a completely different pitch on what they're attempting to do.
Well, Rodgers is singing at the same pitch that he always does, though.
Right.
And I don't think that plays with this. There's a lot of in the laughter about it stuff. It's weird.
Look, him, and I don't know what Aaron Rodgers believes, half the time, or what he's actually toying with and joking about, and what he does, because he's very deadpan in his delivery. What I mean by there's a different pitch involved here is it's safe to say that Aaron Rodgers and Jimmy Kimmel, in what we would term now politics in America, are on opposite sides politically.
Sure.
Right? There's everything is now made to be politicized. So they're on opposite sides politically. So I think what Aaron Rodgers is saying is he makes fun of me because I disagree with him on COVID, on vaccines, on a lot of other things. I'm a free thinker. This guy is a victim of groupthink. This guy only goes after certain types of people, doesn't go after others. He protects them. He said some things I disagree with. So we are sparring on opposite sides of the aisle here. And in Aaron Rodgers' delivery of that, when you accuse someone, if in fact that's what he did, which I don't think he really was, but if you flat out accuse someone of being involved in a child sex ring, then Jimmy Kimmel has every right to get pissed off about that. And he did with his comeback. But I just think we have two guys that disagree with each other that are singing at a different pitch and a different tone on how they do it.
But I don't know how, politics aside, how is there a dividing line with this story? You see what I'm saying?
Well, the dividing line is, and this is what it's going to be used for. This should not be weaponized to be political, but we know what's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of people saying, look at all the rich and powerful on this side that were involved in this, and now we're going to talk about that also. I believe, and again, Aaron Rodgers will have to explain for himself. I believe that's where Aaron Rodgers is going with this. There could be some of your buddies on that list or people that he feels like you've protected over the years on that list politically.
But even associating oneself with or someone else with either being on it, which apparently they're going to release names starting later this evening or maybe within minutes, we'll see. Either being on the list or being associated with people that you know that are on the list, that would be the reason why you don't want the list out, which goes back to the theory that Rodgers threw out there as to why the UFO information was a distraction of sorts from the list being released, not then, but maybe now. He even says he's going to pop some sort of bottle if the list actually is released. But in that same answer, he's mentioning Kimmel and no one else. And it goes back to the joke that Kimmel made in response to Rodgers and his conspiracy theory that he was buying into.
Yeah, I think it's
that's a bit different than...
It's a poor joke by Aaron Rodgers. I'll say this. It's a little uncomfortable when you're talking about popping a bottle or getting out your expensive scotch.
And that's how this has been treated.
Because someone's, now this is going to further a ring of awful crimes that have been committed. And now I'm going to celebrate that my enemies are going to be prosecuted. I think that's just a little bit out of taste.
Yes.
for what Aaron Rodgers is trying to accomplish
Well,
here.
he's not the only one doing that.
And what they're doing. No, not at all. But that's
kind of what this has turned into, though.
it's what everything turns into.
But at least Kimmel is. I mean, I don't know how else you release a statement saying, "Hey, prepare for a lawsuit if you want to continue to go down this road." I'm not going to just show up on the Late Show and roast you in my monologue.
Did Kelly sabotage my mic while she was here? By the way, thanks for Kelly
Maybe
in Vegas
so.
for filling it. But I swear to God that this thing is like there's a ghost in the machine here. Every time I let it go,
it drops.
It starts to slowly. But I'm not even.
So
This
it's
is
getting
like,
older, Jeff.
This is like Chinese water torture. It's not a quick drop.
That's us getting older.
It is like a very, very slow drop to where I believe I'm going insane and that it's not actually dropping, but I swear that it is. I'd blame Kelly in Vegas for doing something to this mic stand while I was gone.
Now, the other
I'll
part
figure it out before
of
the end
just
of this show.
What happened on McAfee? McAfee, you're right, addressed it, but didn't. I mean, he said, I agree with what you said prior to the start of the show. The tone that with McAfee came out with, fine.
Could you tell, by the way, that tone that I just had was joking?
Yes.
Like, this is a good thought experiment right now, right?
But-
I'm clearly joking about that. But someone in this studio or someone else that doesn't
Right.
know me that well could think that I'm actually mad about the mic stand and that something has been dropped or missing. I'm not. It's probably my own brain that thinks it's dropping and it's not. But point being, this is where the communication can get messed up. Because I don't think that anyone fully understands Aaron Rodgers' sense of humor at times and whether or not he's serious or joking with that. That's why he's going to have to come back on the show and explain himself.
Right, but
or he's going to get sued.
Sense of humor or not, it was deliberate to mention Kimmel based on Kimmel taking,
Absolutely. Shots at him.
Yeah, over several different times. But again, this Rodgers keeps receipts. The other part of this, though, Chad, is McAfee went to ESPN and said his show wasn't going to change. And by and large, I think that's been the case. But everyone tunes into McAfee on Tuesday to see what Rodgers is going to say. They're paying him $1 million, reportedly. Now there's reports that, and we'll have AJ Perez from Front Office Sports on later in the show, that ESPN is contemplating pulling Rodgers from programming, and they won't comment. No comment.
Well, that'd be a mistake.
If when Perez has reached out to them on behalf of Front Office Sports, we'll discuss that more later. But that's the other part of
Don't you agree, though? That would be a
from
huge
the
mistake
sports
by
media
ESPN.
perspective. Sure, but
that segment gets talked about more.
But it may
by
not be
every
ESPN's
show
call.
going.
It may not be ESPN's call because of the Disney, ABC, ESPN connection here.
I agree, but I'm saying from a company standpoint and what ESPN is trying to accomplish, that is a bad thing for ESPN's business. I think it's a very good thing for ESPN that they have Aaron Rodgers on weekly because it is the most talked about segment going right now on ESPN every single week.
Sure.
So that would be bad. Now I'm with you. Their hands may be tied.
I mean,
and the Jimmy Kimmel show, I'm sure, is more important to the company than Aaron Rodgers' weekly appearance. So he's going to win out ultimately if he decides, hey, I don't want this guy getting any money to appear on any Disney platform.
Right.
He's probably going to win, but I just think it'd be a mistake from an ESPN standpoint.
Well, I mean, but from a company standpoint, just take out who's involved here. A company standpoint, you have someone of the status of a late-night talk show host, and you have a quarterback who's paid as a contributor to go on said company's network, and he's mentioning Kimmel involved with the list in any way. And then you have your employee, not a contributor, but your late night talk show host, threatening to sue that guy. How do you, if you're any company, how do you respond to that? And if you don't have your employees back, what are you doing as a company?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other part of this.
That's where it gets tricky.
Well, but this is
and that's what, and that's another thing that Pat McAfee said today in his open. It's about 4 minutes long, but he says, I hope these guys can get together as men and squash it and solve this however they need to solve it, and then we can move forward. But I just don't think that that's going to be as easy as Aaron Rodgers says. All good, man. I was just joking around. Well, I don't think it ends with that.
If the list is actually fully released and we have the upwards of 200 people on and whatever, I mean, that also adds to this feud of what the discussion has been hours prior to said list supposedly being released. again, it's I don't just the tone of it. I don't think I have to read into it whether or not he was joking or not. I think it was BS. I'm thinking about what this is all about instead of just some feud about whether or not he's got a tinfoil hat on and he's into conspiracy theories, and you're joking about that, whether or not you want to take a shot or not. Like, this is way different than that. Way different than that.
Yeah.
That's how I view this.
I'm going to pop a bottle when the thing is released.
Right.
It's odd. But it's also, I don't bat an eye when I hear that, because there's a lot of people ready to pop a bottle when that list is released, because all of this stuff is fueled into this divide.
Sure.
And it's just going to be used as, see, I told you, I was right all along, evil, 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 and that's what it is, and not just,
well, both sides will be able to do
you got some people that could be prosecuted over something, or that's awful that these people were involved in that. There's not a lot of sober thinking and sober reactions when it comes to stuff like that. Curious to see where this story goes. AJ Perez joining us later, Hutton. Going to be a good segment because he's all over this, because he's the one getting the no comments right now from ESPN. And we know AJ, and we know when he digs his heels into a story, he's not getting out of that thing until he gets some stuff out of it. So he's going to be all over.
I just think, I'll ask him. I think they're no commenting because they are waiting on how to comment.
Yeah.
This may be way above just the four-letter network when it's all said and done.
I think the first thing
stance that McAfee took, that he's not going to change his show.
I think the first part of it is, let's see if Aaron Rodgers will swallow some pride and apologize in his next visit, or what he's going to say to Jimmy Kimmel about it. I think that's probably their preferred method, where this thing doesn't go any further. I'm just saying, reading that post from Jimmy Kimmel, I don't think an apology is going to do in this. Maybe I'm wrong.
It doesn't.
I don't think it's going to do.
It doesn't seem that way. Chad, we have not discussed the college football playoff since you've arrived back in Music City. The storyline that I don't know, just pondering last night, I'm thinking the Harbaugh brothers and what they're accomplishing as coaches at the highest level, where Jim Harbaugh has Michigan playing for a national title, 3 straight trips to the college football playoff. They're in it for the first time this coming Monday night. He's got a 10-year offer that supposedly is more than what Sean Payton received to go to the Denver Broncos, just in total money. Although now Jim Harbaugh has hired Don Yee, the agent for Tom Brady and the agent for Sean Payton, who reportedly got Sean Payton a 5-year, $100 million contract with Denver. And then on the flip side, you've got John Harbaugh, where the two have already met in a Super Bowl. And now Harbaugh in the NFL, John Harbaugh has the Ravens in the number 1 seed in the AFC, playing great. And right now, they look like they're headed straight towards Las Vegas for the Super Bowl. Attitude and the persona, especially of Jim Harbaugh, plays a factor in all of this. But man, what a story that you have the two brothers who have done this again, where one's playing for a college football national championship, regardless of the backstory. And the backstory plays a factor in this, but it also heightens everything. And John Harbaugh, who has been there and done that and stuck with and has stuck around Baltimore, gotten rid of some defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators, switch offensive coordinators this season, was behind the scenes saying who knows what about Lamar Jackson, who didn't want to show up because he wasn't getting a fully guaranteed deal. And here they are as the number 1 seed in the AFC in 2023-24. What a great story. And as we move forward, think about both of them winning the title and how we haven't really paid attention to it.
I'm going to stop short of saying great story on the Jim Harbaugh part of it. I think it's an amazing amount of success for two brothers at the same time in college, the NFL. And I'm not going to sit here and say that everything Connor Stallions did is the only reason that Jim Harbaugh is successful at Michigan. It's not as black and white as that. Did he cheat? Yes.
Yeah.
Did he know about it? Yes. I feel
There's
pretty
no way he
confident in
didn't know about
saying
it.
he knew about it. I feel confident in saying his staff knew about it. I feel confident in saying, especially based on what J.J. McCarthy is telling us, that they made a decision They said, hey, Ohio State was getting our signs legally in 2019 and 2020, so we decided to up the ante. And we went out to get their signs by any means necessary, even if it wasn't legal. And I don't think the players knew that anything going on was illegal.
And that's
but
what
the coaches knew.
And
the coaches knew.
J.J. McCarthy on a teleconference today said, we did things the right way as players. It would be very unfortunate to not get recognized for all the hard work that we put in and everything we accomplished over this last year. And I've said, Chad, I will view the players different. There's a different mindset I have about the players and what they've done this year compared to what I'll think about Harbaugh. But in the you've got your quarterback sitting on a teleconference where he's straight up saying, like, hey, Ohio State was stealing our signs legally in 2019 and 2020, and we had to up our game. Now, do I think that J.J. McCarthy knows the NCAA rule book and knows you can't scout off-site? No, I doubt that. But do I think the staff does? Yes. Do I think the head coach does? Sure. And Connor Stallions absolutely did. He's fired. And here we are with Michigan playing for a national title, and it's not going to matter. They're still, if they win, Chad, no one's going to forget about this. No one's going to forget about the banners and the accolades and the fact that Harbaugh won on his own terms, gave the middle finger on his way out to the NFL, and Michigan backed him the whole way, continues to do so. Former Michigan players are sitting with the utmost regarded Michigan fan in Connor Stallions at the Rose Bowl. And all the while, the NCAA is acting like, well, we're investigating this. We're going to lay the hammer down. And I think they will. But, when? By the time we get to the next college football playoff television rights deal? I'm it's going to be a while.
More convinced than ever that he's gone.
Me too.
By comments, by everything he's doing. And he is quick to defer everything to the players.
Yes.
If you notice. Hey, talk to these guys. These are the guys that matter. Man, we're so connected in that locker room. These guys have done such a good job. And good for him, because the players have had to overcome some things said about them that probably isn't completely fair to all the players in that locker room. But I'm also not going to cut any slack to the coaching staff that knew about it, knew they were breaking the rules. And Jim Harbaugh, I believe, is one of them. So is it an amazing tale of success of two brothers achieving the absolute heights of professional football and college football?
Just where we are today.
Yeah. This Michigan team, though, is going to be viewed far differently than anything the Ravens have done. And I am getting a little sick and tired of the tired narrative and the points that every Michigan coach, Jim Harbaugh's, boy, man, we've overcome so much. This is just who we are. I don't want to hear it from you. If J.J. McCarthy wants to talk about it and say it, or other players in the team that maybe didn't fully know what was going on with Connor Stallions was illegal and all of that, fine. They've had to overcome a lot this year. It's an incredible team. That team is a really good team and worthy of the success that they've had this year and worthy of a chance to play for a national title, which they will in less than a week's time against Washington. I don't want to hear about it from the coaches. I don't want to hear about it from Jim Harbaugh. I'm not looking at Jim Harbaugh as some sympathetic figure. And here's what is going to me, it's going to anger me a little bit, because I do think loyalty should matter in sports, and I'll get into this a little bit later. Loyalty to team, loyalty to administration, loyalty to fan base should matter. It's not going to matter with Jim Harbaugh, because if it mattered, the dude would sign that damn contract in front of him right now and not talk to an NFL team. And he would take the brunt of whatever's coming from the NCAA and stick with it and continue to coach these guys he professes love for and everything he's built at Michigan and see them through the wilderness of whatever's coming with the NCAA. He's not going to. I don't believe he's going to. Now, he could surprise me and sign it and stay there long term, and I'd applaud him for doing so. I don't think that's going to happen. And that bothers me a little bit, because this is a group that has stuck by him through not just one, but two scandals now. He had to be suspended for one, and he had to be suspended for another, and we don't know what fully is coming with the second with the NCAA yet.
Well, but last I checked, Jim Harbaugh wasn't winning just 3 games a year. That would be loyalty if you're sticking by your coach like Michigan has with the winner. So it goes both ways there.
Yeah, but he's doing it in part because possibly they've been cheating.
Well,
so my point is, there's a lot of coaches who have won that it gets so bad at some point that even fans and administration say, I don't know if it's fully worth it right now anymore. Maybe you should move on. They're offering him a raise with really no stipulation about what the NCAA is going to do. The only stipulation is do not talk to NFL teams. Stay here. We want you that bad.
For this year.
For 2 years, I think it is, but still, just for the foreseeable future. Stay here. See us through this, coach. He's not going to do it. If he was going to do it, I think he already would have signed it.
Well, but I mean, from the business side of it, don't you wait and try to up it more? You get rid of that clause? With Don Yee as your agent?
I don't know how much more he's going to get by winning the one more game in the national title. That's why I think what he wants to get is the NFL job. This is me thinking about what he's wanting next, and it's to not deal with the fallout of what's coming.
The fallout also next year is different than the team he has right now with the 20-plus players that could potentially be on an NFL field, his quarterback and everyone else that could go. Yeah, I mean, all that plays a factor. I think that played a factor in why he came back. Because Denver was in his living room.
A lot of those guys decided to forego the NFL draft to come back and do this.
Yep.
And win the national title. My point is, he recruited the other guys that are on the team, too, that would be coming back. It's not just the junior, senior group that could go out with a national title. I don't see Jim Harbaugh as some sympathetic character in all of this. I see him as an opportunist. I see him as a guy that got tired of getting whipped by Ohio State, that decided we're going to do whatever it takes. If they've got our signs, we got to get theirs. And they did it, and they've won since, and good for them. Michigan fans are enjoying the ride, and they should. I'm not blaming Michigan fans for loving every second of this. They should be loving this, but I'm also not going to paint Jim Harbaugh as some victim who's overcome the odds.
No, I'm not trying to do that either. But I also, the more and more this goes on, I'm thinking, Chad, I mean, the NCAA allows this to go on. The NCAA has set up this scenario where Michigan is the favorite to win the national title. Harbaugh goes his merry way, and then they settle with a punishment for Michigan down the road for players that have no business being a part of all of this, and they will be. And it's just kind of but it's so predictable.
I think it would be a little extreme for the NCAA to come in now and say, you're ineligible or you can't play in the playoff. I think they do need to allow some time.
Prior to they had to go by their bylaws. But the bylaws are set up for this.
The Big Ten had to go by their bylaws to force any punishment. The Big Ten maybe could have done more to Jim Harbaugh in Michigan, but it sucks for future Michigan players because I feel like this is headed towards them getting the punishment.
Exactly. Bowl
ban, scholarship reduction, whatever. Maybe the national championship, if they win it, it's going to be vacated. It's unfortunate.
Well, it goes back to the comments about America's team when he made those comments after the Penn State win. And I said, America's team is Washington. And here we have the national championship matchup, Michigan and Washington.
It should not be hard for America to decide who to root for in this game.
Right.
It's Washington. What an unbelievable story.
Great story.
Kalen DeBoer. Jim Harbaugh is the son of a college coach that quarterbacked Michigan and was a famous NFL quarterback that then later on got into coaching and has had a lot of success. Are you rooting for him in the midst of all this scandal, or Kalen DeBoer, who grew up in South Dakota, coached NAIA schools to national championships, worked his way from the ground up to go to Indiana to be an offensive coordinator, to Fresno State, and now Washington, quarterbacked by a guy who should have won the damn Heisman, and Michael Penix Jr., I'll say that again, from a mountaintop, that was cut by Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee that said he wasn't good enough for a scholarship there, had to go to Indiana and earn it through a number of injuries, transfers to Washington, and now is the best deep ball thrower I may have ever seen play the game of football. That's got a chance to have Washington win the national title. It's easy, America. Cheer on the Huskies in this game. I for sure will be cheering on Washington win the national title. I've been cheering on them since week one. This team and this story.
But think about the Big Ten. The Big Ten, the perceived top players right now. Michigan, the whole saga, they step in. They actually did something. They did something, whatever you want to say. And it's been perceived that they served their punishment and they've moved on, right? They win in that, just in the public perception of them actually doing something. They win. Washington's coming aboard. Michigan, has been there and done that the last couple of years, and
Yep.
now they have a chance to win it. The Big Ten is going to end up winning at the end of all of this. And Tony Petitti actually stepped up and did something that could have affected Michigan being there right now, and they're still there. Either way, the Big Ten's hoisting the trophy. And that's the other thing. Had it been Texas against Bama, it would have been SEC versus SEC. And I'm still not hearing the Big Ten yet.
Yeah,
Well, we will.
First time since 2018, it's going to be a non-SEC team to win it. It was Clemson then. So that's good news for new blood either way with this matchup. One quick thing, because I wasn't here yesterday to talk about some of these games. Thank God that Washington was able to win that game in the end, if only because I felt awful for Dylan Johnson, the running back for Washington, who could not physically get off the turf and pull himself off the field and cost his team 30 seconds of clock that would have ended the game. That opened the door for Texas to have that last drive simply because they had to stop the clock because he could not physically get off the field on that running play. The whole time, that's all I'm thinking about is how awful do you feel if you're that kid, knowing that the foot injury that you came into the game with, that you've been battling through the whole game, it finally reaches its breaking point. You can't walk off the field, and you cost your team possibly the game because they're getting the ball with about 17, 18 seconds left, if not. Now, the special teamer, the long snapper who ran into the guy also helped cost it, and I felt bad for him in the moment as well. But if they lost the game under those circumstances, that would have been terrible.
And were you like me? I thought Texas was going to score. I thought Texas would win the game.
I thought it was over.
Yeah.
Michael Penix Jr.'s face was what my face looked like watching it, where you could tell he's thinking, here we go. And then the 1 second left, and that was the right call. There was 1 or 2 seconds left. But you could hear the audible gasp from the Washington section in the dome. No.
Just the way that Texas got back in
Here it comes.
You know? And they have the ball about to score 1 second. Yeah. Washington survives.
And that's this. I don't hate Texas or anything. I'm just
I know.
Just for it to end that way, with you got the onside kick, you run the ball 3 times. You're going to give it to them with little to no time inside the 20-yard line.
You're up big, but you should have been up more.
Versus you're going to give it to them with 57 seconds left or whatever it was,
and they give up a 40-yard
and
pass.
you go to the 30, 35-yard line after the 15-yard penalty.
Yeah, and they have a 41-yard gain.
But Washington found a way. They've done it all year. They found a way all year.